Well, look, but before I introduce the panel, I just wanted to thank Fraser for putting this together, and we were able to kind of connect this across both our conferences. Hopefully, that was convenient for more of you to come to both. So, and if you still want to come to ours tomorrow, feel free. I'm going to, be in a room for 2 days by myself. Hopefully not by myself, but I'd love to have you join. So we're going to talk about the future of utilities with two of the real high quality utilities in our sector, leading utilities, and two executives who I think is interesting, come kind of up from the operating side of the business, which I think matters more and more these days with just operations being key. So very happy to have next to me Garrick Rochow, who is the CEO of CMS Energy, and then Ralph LaRossa next to Garrick, who's the CEO of Public Service Enterprise Group, also known as PSEG. So maybe you could just spend a minute, Garrick, Ralph, just giving a quick view of your companies and the investment case. I know many of you know it, but just can't hurt to get the pitch out there one more time while everyone's here, and then we'll talk about some other things. So thanks.
But CMS Energy, 95% of our business and earnings is regulated utility. And we serve, out of the 10 million residents in Michigan, we serve 6.7 million of those residents, either electric or natural gas. And it boils down to meters, about 1.9 electric meters, 1.7 million gas meters. One of the fourth largest combination utility in the US. And a large infrastructure to support that, everything from 90,000 miles of wire to 28,000 miles of distribution pipe and everything in between. So plenty of opportunities for rich capital investment, not just for the sake of investment, but also bring value to our customers and cleaning up energy. And then there's a small part of our business that is independent power production, but with bilateral contracts for energy and capacity, primarily with contracted renewables. That's a 5% of the makeup. The investment thesis is pretty simple, and it's stood the test of time for the last 20 plus years, and that's a long capital runway. Now, a lot of utilities have that long capital runway, but it's really about where are you investing and how are you positioning the business for the future. And I'm sure we'll get into it, is in clean energy, not just in the supply side of the business, how we're making the grid more resilient, how we're cleaning up our gas system as well, all kinds of opportunities there. It is also about, if you have that rich capital, how do you afford it? We'll say we're one of the best at taking costs out of the business. We can talk about some of those ways we pull cost out to make bills affordable. And at the end of the day, you got to have a good regulatory construct that's going to support that. And we have a top tier, S&P's top tier regulatory jurisdiction in Michigan. You put all together with a good balance sheet, and you're able to, over the last 20 years, 7% CAGR from an earnings perspective, and the dividend yield, a really healthy total shareholder return for our stakeholders.
Great, Ralph.
So I could say ditto.
Yeah, right.
And seriously, I won't repeat a bunch of the things, but the thesis is very, very similar. Just the word 90-10. The 10% for us is our unregulated nuclear plants, which was one of the strategic decisions we had to make when we first stepped in as a new management team. We had three things in front of us. We had to clean up some pension issues that we had from an accounting standpoint. We did that. We made a decision on nuclear, which is looking better and better every day, that decision. And the other one that also seems to have been a good one was we exited offshore wind partnership with Ørsted. And so those are three pieces of the puzzle that we had to step through. I think we did okay on all three of those. And as a result, everything we've been talking about for the last 12 months has been simplification and that same thesis. Difference in our service territory, if you look at New Jersey, take a straight line between the George Washington Bridge and the Ben Franklin Bridge down to Philadelphia, go 30 miles on each side, and that's our service territory, electric and gas, 2.5 million customers, give and take a little bit on the electric and the gas side. So a very concentrated area, and very dense, which provides a lot of opportunities I can talk about on energy efficiency, electric vehicles. We also run as basically a contractor, the LIPA system on Long Island for them. That's a contract that we've had in place since Superstorm Sandy, coming up due in a couple of years. And we've been relatively successful out there. I had one hiccup a few years back, but things have been going pretty smooth out there as well. So you're a customer, so you can tell me how well we're doing on Long
Definitely
Island.
a lot better. Yeah.
So,
No, been noticeable. Thank you. I've left you alone as I promised. So.
Yes.
But well, great. Thanks for those intros. And somehow every time I have a conference, utility stocks seem to kind of fall right into it. I think interest rates going up, maybe the pressure today, but just how do you feel about the fundamentals of the business? And just in some ways, it's kind of the best of times for utilities from the standpoint of investment opportunities, but then you have to manage a lot of other interests. So just maybe talk to the fundamentals of the business these days. And
so look, I'll start. I think the opportunities are dramatic for us. I mean, but whether it's upgrading the infrastructure that we have to from an electric standpoint, when you got states like New Jersey that really want to invest in electrification, tremendous amount of opportunities for us in that last mile up to a customer's home. We've done a lot over the years. Remember the lights went out here in New York City in 2003. A lot of companies invested in the transmission system. Superstorm Sandy comes, we upgrade a lot of substations and switching stations, but we never really did much on that last mile. And what's going on now from an electrification standpoint is really calling that out for us. We need to make that investment. So that's a runway that, my goodness, it'll last well beyond my career for investment opportunities in that last piece. Our engineers are calling this, whether it's electric vehicles or other things that are going on in your home. This is like when central air conditioners came in. And it's just a new load pocket popping up every day. So that's a good thing and a great opportunity for us. At the same time, you've got all the environmental activity that's going on and really driving, at least for us, energy efficiency. We're one of the few companies that are allowed to earn on and of our energy efficiency investments. They've been creeping up into the billions of dollars now. So it's not a small piece of our business anymore. It's a real piece of our business. And behind the meter energy efficiency that we can earn on. And really everybody likes it, policymakers and environmental organizations. So great opportunity for us. And then as long as you have had someone manage your balance sheet the way we have, and I think where a number of companies in the utility space have, not everybody, but you're in pretty good shape to weather the storm that we're going through. We are going through a storm now, and we'll come out of the back end of it with a huge opportunity for investment, and we'll still have those strong balance sheets. And again, the one thing I think is a real benefit to us are those cash flows that we get from those nuclear plants, which is not requiring us to go to the market the way it might for some others.
Yeah.
So just to add the good points here and a similar story from that perspective, but we talk a lot as this clean energy transformation. A little different word than transition, because we do truly think it is a transformation in the way we supply energy, both from a distribution perspective, but also supply. And significant, we're going to be out of coal by 2025. We walked away and retired 12 coal plants over that window, really over the last 10 to 12 years. And it means dramatic capital investments. And from a renewables perspective, solar, wind, storage, and that's just an amazing opportunity as we clean up the environment and clean up the air. But we have this amazing capital investment opportunity in front of us. And then the other thing is opportunities to invest very similar in the grid, but also from a resiliency standpoint. We've seen changing weather patterns that are more frequent storms, more higher intensity from a wind perspective. That provides an ample opportunity to harden the grid, to underground portions of it, as well as think about technology and automation. So another rich capital investment opportunity. So those are playing out in this window too. And the other thing that I would say too, that we think is really in the space of transformation is in the space of digital. And there's a lot of talk about AI, but I would say just plain old machine learning. If you're not talking about that as a utility company, if you're not leveraging that as a utility company, in 10 years, you're going to be way behind, just in taking costs out of your business, but also the ability to really predict and be able to shape how you're serving your customers.
Like resiliency and the like, is that?
Like resiliency and be able to predict where outages are going to occur more, to be able to pinpoint where you should be doing tree trimming to avoid an outage, to predict it, to be able to how to better put your assets into the market, in our case, the MISO market, how to bid them in and the like. So through AI and machine learning, predictive learning.
Okay. So you both mentioned resiliency, Superstorm Sandy, some of the storm activity. We also had obviously the Maui fire this year, and I think there's both opportunities, but there's risk of just getting caught in this. So just how are you thinking about managing that risk, and is the industry overall talking about some kind of protection for investors from kind of shock events like that?
Go ahead, you can start.
No, certainly the industry is, and EEIs have some forms, but I think it's really important as energy providers that we're looking internal and what is the biggest impact for us as a utility. And what we've seen in this space is a little different climate. We still have wildfire protection activities, but we're seeing more impact from just more frequent storms and higher wind speeds. And just to give you a little flavor of this, we designed our electric distribution system, 40s and 50s, and we designed it for 40-mile-an-hour winds with a ½ inch ice. That's the way the system was designed, even into the 90s, 2000 timeframe. Our standards have now changed. We're designing that system to 80-mile-an-hour winds and 1½ inches of ice. And so it's a more robust system that we're hardening out there. It used to be the utilities would fight undergrounding, at least in rural areas like Michigan. Now we're looking at how do we selectively underground, because the cost of underground is starting to reach parity with above ground construction. That presents another opportunity. There are tons of opportunities, automation, whether it's fault locating or the like, to be able to better pinpoint and respond. So a more resilient grid where we can respond quicker, because that's what our customers are expecting as we move forward in the future.
Yeah, all of those things are true. The one thing I would add that is, and talk about this from an operating standpoint, we have to operate a little differently. So maybe a little more proactive in taking the grid down in certain areas. You can shut that down, but that's going to all depend upon the communication lines with the customers, making sure that's all okay.
Yeah.
If you go back to, again, I'll go back to Superstorm Sandy. In the Rockaways, there was some problems that took place because the wires were left up, and there were some fires that took place in that area. Very small and contained, but another lesson learned that we've been able, as we went in to run that system, to try to learn from. So there's ways that you can do that, but it's all about the communication with the customers and staying ahead of it. And that goes for the gas system too. Again, back to Superstorm Sandy. Some of the barrier islands had a lot of fires that were going on because those gas, once the house gets moved off the foundations, it's going to take the gas service with it as well. So you got to be thinking all of those pieces through.
So I hear all these investment opportunities, and it's hard not to get excited about the runway of investment. We're in an infrastructure conference. It's great to see, but customers have to pay for it. So maybe you could talk to affordability, and is this all going to work in terms of customers being able to pay for these investments?
No, so that's why I think this energy efficiency is so key. I actually had an opportunity last week to speak at the Democratic Governors Association, and I got asked that exact question. And my answer is going to be exactly the same as I gave there. We have worked in New Jersey because of the energy efficiency work that we've done. We have not hit our peak load in the last 10 years. So all this electrification coming on, but people want it when they want it to be available. So let's not confuse load with the availability of the product. So that's why we have to build past the 40-mile-per-hour wind speeds, right? That's all the last mile. Think about how many poles have to be upgraded to get up to that 80-mile-per-hour threshold that we talked about. That's because people want the product when they want it. Now we can help them use less through some of the energy efficiency work that we're doing, and we're going to continue to do that. And in New Jersey, because we've worked together with the regulator, our affordability has never gotten above 4% of take home. So the amount you're paying for your electric and gas bill has not gone beyond 4% of your take home over the last 10 years. And we got all these spikes that are going on and everything else, but we spread out the cost. I can go into a lot of detail about how we do it, but it's the partnership with the regulator that allows us to do that. Low-income customers, the story is no more than 3% at any given time because of the programs that we have in place for them as well. So I believe you can do it. It's a balancing act, and you got to work really tightly with your regulator to make that happen.
Energy efficiency is an important part. I mean, that's been part of our equation as well. And if we look at our bills here in Michigan, but in Michigan, they're below the national average, they're below the Midwest average as well. And so we've been able to do some things to be able to make these capital investments. And how we think about it is just relentless about taking costs out of the business. And we apply what's called our CE way. I'll just break that down for this lean engineering. It's no different than what you've seen in the automotive industry and the Toyota production system for 70+ years. We continue to look at how do we add value to our customers, and if there's waste in that system, we take it out. And now with that, you have better service and you improve your cost profile. That's $50 million on an annual basis. We take out every single year out of the business. And then we look for episodic cost savings opportunities. And those are advancing and improving some of our purchase power agreements. Retiring coal has a big influence. That's about $90 million of that 200 and just coal plants that are retired. And then the other piece is just, we call it running a damn good utility, or some people call it operational excellence. But when we're better than when we're yeah, that's my shorthand for it. That's our ability to just run our plants better than the market. That saves our customers money to the tune of about $600 million last year, better than the market. And frankly, that saving shows up in PSCR, power supply costs for our customers. And so that's how we do it. We just are just methodical and deliberate, just relentless about taking costs out of the business.
So you talked a little bit earlier about electrification. And the beginning of that, one of the things I like to say is EI conferences, not the financial one, but the industry one used to be kind of boring. And then this year you had Elon Musk, you had Bill Gates, and you even had Prime, Deion Sanders speak at the conference. So something's definitely different in the utility industry. But on the other hand, I'm not sure we've seen really a lot of this demand yet. So is it about to come? Are we ready for it? I know, Garrick, I was out visiting you and you've talked about a couple big new customers coming, but just how should we think about this kind of electrification demand? EVs, AI, reshoring, all that stuff.
So particularly in the space of AI and machine learning, there's going to be a lot of need for computing power and data centers. I think that's pretty well known, and a lot of us in the industry are experiencing that with large data centers have an interest in your state or in your jurisdiction. So that's very real. But to me, what is the more interesting part is what's been, it's the CHIPS Act, it's the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act, and the IRA that has really boosted some what I'd call manufacturing. And we've seen a real boost in that in Michigan, significant. We've really positioned, Michigan's been positioned, our governor's positioned as one of the bright spots in electric vehicle plants, and particularly battery plants. We've seen that in semiconductors and semiconductor production, as well as polysilicon. The largest manufacturer of polysilicon in North America is located in Michigan. And I guarantee it's in this room and it's in every one of your single phones in the chip. It's made in Michigan and it's growing gangbusters and part of the CHIPS Act, but also a good business environment. And the reason I like it, even more so than data centers and AI, and I'm big on that, but it comes with jobs. And jobs means residential customers, and that means more margin. And then also it comes when you have production in manufacturing, you have supply chain and you have business that surround it, and so in goods and materials that come in. And so I'm bullish on Michigan. We're seeing a lot there as one of the real growth opportunities in our industry and certainly with the company.
Yeah, so we're seeing it. It's a little bit different, right, for this area, in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area. We're going to see we're more of a service environment, right, supporting this industry, the finance industry, and so on. And I think we're seeing it more on electric vehicles. I think the number was 9% or more of retail sales last month. So we're starting to see that kick up. I saw that in one of the articles today. So that's actually happening. And then there's what's fundamentally changing that people really aren't seeing are building codes. That's where you're going to see this incremental change for us. The approach many people are taking now is to change the building codes. There's not a big legislative mandate. There's not a big change, but we're going to change the building code so you can't put in a gas appliance, or you can't put in an inefficient appliance. So you can't. So they're going to drive a lot of this change through the building codes. So keep an eye on your local building officials, because that's where the change is really taking place.
Yeah. So Ralph, I don't know if you were here earlier, but Manoj, I think, teed up a question about offshore wind. And obviously you're not investing in offshore wind anymore, but New Jersey as a state is a focus on it. I think just passed a law to support it further. So could you maybe just talk to how that is all going to work in terms of timing and reliability? And
yeah, look, there's a bunch of the IRA was good in a lot of factors. One of the things that was good for us, it really made some clarity around the tax, and that's why we backed out of that. It wasn't a policy decision, so just say that up front. However, it did work out well for us, and as you can see with some of the fixed costs and the way that thing's been working, I think. Look, the companies up and down the East Coast, they're in a little bit. It was talked about earlier on one of the other panels. Everybody bid on a fixed cost basis, and then they're stuck with inflation and interest rates going up, and it's really making a tough. I think you're going to see some projects come on, and not all of the projects that are on the blueprint right now have blueprints made up for them now. I think maybe over time they'll get some of those other ones will get resurrected. But I think the one that we were involved in, Ocean Wind 1, that will come to fruition. But it may just really lengthen the process for these coming online and what happens. All of that said, what I worry about from a reliability standpoint and more from an environmental standpoint, right? We are counting on that 11,000 megawatts in New Jersey to come on shore, all clean. Well, if it doesn't, and we electrify, what are we going to be using? Nuclear plants running all out.
Yep.
We don't get the wind that comes on. Am I turning on another coal plant in West Virginia through PJM? And then what am I really doing from an environmental standpoint? So yeah, I got a reliability issue, but we also got to deal with the environmental mandates that we've put on ourselves and what we really want to try to accomplish here. Because just electrifying into a dirty PJM grid is not going to make anything better for all of us here that live in this area that are breathing the air that's coming across. I live in Bergen County, New Jersey. And you look at that and you look at the NOAA site, I mean, it's got the worst particle air that exists. And it's not, just the way it is. And it's all coming over from the west. So we got to do two things. We got to make sure it's reliable. So if it's low amount of megawatts, I'm okay with it because we'll still have, the base load coming from other places. We got a very robust transmission grid, but I am worried about the environmental attributes if we start electrifying into this dirty grid. Again, no impact on us other than just trying to do the right thing from a customer standpoint, not a financial impact.
It does seem like some regions are starting to look at new gas again. I just don't know if that can be done in New Jersey or other parts of the Northeast, but you wonder if that changes at some point, just particularly if it's clean gas, even the offshore wind only runs half the time.
I think hydrogen is going to play a role. I really do. Yeah. I think the IRA is going to kickstart that industry and being where we are from a nuclear standpoint, we're pretty well positioned for that as well. I don't have anything planned today for that, but having conversations. So there's going to be all of those things, whether it's renewable natural gas, cleaner natural gas, a little bit of a hydrogen mix in there. You're going to see all of that taking place. And I hope the offshore wind industry, is successful. I really do. I think it's or we got to build a lot of big wires to the Midwest and get that wind to show up in this load pocket here.
And then just to close that out, assuming it does have success, I think, is it fair to say your opportunity is to build the transmission or to upgrade transmission?
Yeah, I think there has to be, the only way to do this right is to build a backbone up and down the East Coast. I mean, I joke all the time, we built a really big backbone up the New Jersey Turnpike and we did that after Superstorm Sandy. Well, you need an entire one that goes up and down the Northeast if you're going to bring this power online, because if you're just counting on one generator lead to bring an entire wind farm in, it may not break in our lifetimes, it's going to break.
Yeah.
Right. There's going to be a failure that's going to take place, and you want to have redundant feeds and redundant sources to route that power in. It's what we've done onshore. It should be no different offshore.
Okay. And then maybe just in MISO and in your region on reliability, I guess not resiliency,
Yeah. So just from a broader, similar attributes from a clean energy perspective, as I said, our plan is to be out of coal by 2025. And the question often gets asked, well, how are you going to ensure reliability of that? But just to walk you through that, 12 plants retired. Our last 3 plants will retire in 2025. Is a 60% carbon reduction, aligns with the 1.5 degree Paris Accord scenario. So again, we've seen the cleaning air and particulate matter in Michigan, in the greater Midwest. But it's a lot of renewables. It's wind, it's onshore wind. We haven't done any offshore in the Great Lakes, and that's faces a lot of resistance just from communities and people around the lake. A lot of solar, a lot of storage, 8 gigawatts, 550 megawatts of storage, and we will see in future integrated resource plans that's only going to grow. Now, what we've done is to ensure reliability for our customers as well as MISO is we've really leveraged existing natural gas plants. And so we acquired the Covert facility as we retired coal has an existing profile. And we believe that carbon capture and sequestration plays a role in the future to be able to operate that in addition to hydrogen blending as a mix. And so those are all components of it. And then to Ralph's earlier point, we can't underestimate the importance of energy efficiency and demand response. Those play important roles in shaving the peak, particularly in demand response in a place like MISO, but also bringing down the overall load through energy efficiency, which is good for the environment as well as good for our stakeholders.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask one more question and then we'll open it up to folks in the audience. So we haven't hit on your state regulatory environments that much. I know you mentioned Garrick, it's highly rated, but just maybe you could talk about how you're feeling about the regulatory environments. Ralph, I know you have a rate case coming, long track record of success. Garrick, you've had I think Mike on my team talks about, string of four deals, four settlements in the last 4 out of 4. So maybe just talk about the regulatory environment in your states. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll get us rolling here. It starts in law. And one of the things about Michigan is that much of energy policy in the regulatory construct is in legislation. And so it's forward-looking test years. It's 10-month rate cases. It allows us to earn above and beyond the prevailing ROE through incentive mechanisms, whether that's on renewables build, whether that's on energy efficiency or demand response, even financial compensation mechanisms on PPA. So there's a lot in that law. In addition, you have a nice framework. We have appointed commissioners at staggered terms, so you have consistency in how that's operated and how are very skilled in that. And so we've seen constructive ROEs in that, and that's allowed us, with good work with the team back at CMS Energy, but also with a good staff at the commission, to be able to get a string of 4 settlements as of recent. One was an integrated resource plan that had 20+ interveners. Those are with the attorney generals, it's with staff, it's with the commission itself, business community, environmentals, and the like. So we're able to get the outcomes that we need in Michigan, which is absolutely great. I really attribute it to not only the good work, but there's alignment on what we're doing. We're focused on clean energy. We're focused on electric reliability, the distribution system, a safe gas system, and doing it in an affordable way. Now we can debate on the how we get that done, and that's where we debate. But if we're aligned on the goals, you get to the right outcomes. Now, I want to be careful when I say constructive. That doesn't mean it's perfect, and right. And often we look at that didn't work out exactly the way you had hoped, and that happens. There's always that give and take, but we're always looking at how do we continuously improve the process. We're approaching trackers right now through the electric side, been very successful in the gas side of the business. Do it. So it's that continuous improvement process, but really a solid foundation in a good jurisdiction.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about 3 regulators for us. First one is on the nuclear side. I said we're deregulated on nuclear, but at the end of the day, the IRA has basically put us back in a regulated-like environment. So first thing is we get those PTCs aligned, and we get some rules out of Treasury on that. That will really smooth things out for us on that 10% of the business that we talked about. And then what's left is the T&D business. Well, we're about half regulated by FERC. And so FERC has been, I think, operating really well over the last 2-3 years. I know Willie Phillips has done a really nice job and has tried to keep things stable. So I think that part of our business is in really good shape. And then, unfortunately, we lost the president of our Board of Public Utilities in New Jersey, Joe Friedeliso, passed away suddenly. He's been on a number of webcasts with you and just was somebody who really loved what he did and really cared about a number of items, the environment and just making sure utilities did well. And it's such a loss for us. And so there's a new BPU president, Christine Sadovi, who stepped in there, who I think will do a very good job. She's not known to the investment community yet. She will become more well known. She's very strong on the environment issues that are out there. But what underlies us across the board on all of this is the blue collar jobs that we create. So we've moved through a number of different governors, a number of different administrations. While Joe was with the BPU for 18 years, he was only in as the president over the last 6, while Phil Murphy was in. And then before that, you had Republican BPU presidents. So it's been consistency, and that consistency all exists with the fact that we create jobs. We only use blue collar labor. We only use prevailing wages in the state. So that base stays there, and the focus on that reliability is there no matter who's in office. So I think we're in really good shape, and I'm not very concerned. You were 4 for 4. I don't know. I don't think we've ever not settled the case in New Jersey. So
undefeated.
Yeah, I think it's undefeated.
No, that's great. So why don't we take some questions from the audience? Shar?
So say we go forward and see 10 years from now, everybody has a and everybody is now selling that back grid power back to the grid. So everyone is. So can you tell me how each one of your utilities will react to that kind of future music
Yeah.
other people are trying to work on?
So I read, and so Tesla came out with something the other day. They've been pushing some changes as well on that exact thing, that demand response back into the grid and the batteries and so on from an EV standpoint. You know what's going to happen? We're going to need really big wires, because I don't know where your car is going to be today. So I've got to be able to, we're just going to be a highway both ways, right? So I like to say, I don't care which way the power's flowing. And I just got to make sure that the wire is big enough to allow you to flow both ways. So I can't guarantee that your car is going to be in your garage today. You might be down at the mall tomorrow when you decide to plug in. If you're down at the mall, I got to make sure that wire is big enough to handle everybody pushing that way. So when we talk about making the grid resilient from an 80-mile-per-hour wind standpoint, we also got to make it resilient from a standpoint of being able to let people drive both ways on our wires. Well, yeah, so again, I want to ask for everybody. For us, we're decoupled. So I don't care what the usage is one way or the other. I just want to make sure that my wire is big enough so that you can do what you want to do on it. So the fact that we decoupled a few years back, and again, it's paid a lot of dividends in a lot of places for us on that front, but not every utility is. So I think that is something that regulators are going to have to struggle with across the country.
Yeah.
The charging companies and even the ChargeScape and the others, I haven't been concerned about them at all. I mean, and when I say not concerned about them, we're concerned just as Ralph said here with the infrastructure. That's what we do. We've stayed out of being the charge points, the EV goes. That's not where our space is. And so we've encouraged them to be part of our system, and with rebates that we get recovery on, to be able to build out part of the system, whether that's in your home or whether that's across the electric grid, DC fast chargers and the like. So we welcome them into the mix. We think it is part of the supply equation for the future. Right now, with some of the IIJA dollars that came out, Michigan in the Midwest was one of the most dollars in terms of school bus EVs. So we're working with a number of schools right now on how to have two-way flow and devise programs so they can do that. I think that's a better business case than the individual who's parked at home some of the time and at the parking garage and you don't know where they're at. In fact, that's a much harder thing to model. So school buses, and that's going to be very real. And so we're working on those programs first and developing what those look like in the regulatory construct. But going back to where I started, the space of the future of the utility has to be in AI and it has to be in digital. And it's going to be able to optimize that grid. Not only that you have the highway, but how do you avoid the congestion? Not just on the transmission system, but the distribution system. So you got to be able to see when those vehicles are plugged in. You got to be able to know market pricing, and you got to be able to run a reliable grid with all those different sources. We call it optimizing the grid. It's a simple word to say it, but you've got to have a lot more technology to be able to see.
But don't lose sight of what he just said. It's optimizing. We've done this for years at the transmission level. We have not done it for years at the distribution level. That is a big change, and it's going to be required as we move down this path.
Yeah. Steve?
Well, I just be totally honest with you. The Public Service Commission in Michigan hasn't rewarded pilots a whole lot. And so we tend to be a fast follower. And so we are tuned in with EPRI, we're tuned into Low Carbon Initiative, we're tuned into all those things. We let other people pilot because we don't see a good recovery path with those. And then we learn, and when we can bring a good business case, then we implement it. And so we're watching hydrogen as there. We're not doing any pilots on hydrogen as an example. We do believe there's a case for carbon capture in there, and there's there are tons of tax credits to be able to support that. But again, I'm not building today. I'm watching others scale up and build and harvesting the best practices before we do that. Lithium ion, we just looked at the numbers of this. With the tax credits that's available, if you build at scale, it's now on pace with the combined cycle plant. And so the battery technology continues to improve along those lines. And so I can say in our next IRP, which we'll file probably in the next 3 years, you're going to see a lot more renewables, the things you expect, but you're going to see a lot more storage in that as well. Most likely lithium ion, but we're following some of the work was just funded here in the last week by the DOE as well.
Yeah, I just reinforce that. New Jersey doesn't even support EPRI from an R&D standpoint as far as making an investment. So we don't get involved in that level of detail, other than some investments in some of the funds that are out there that are poking around at some of this. But follow the money on the IRA is what you just heard as well, right? And so batteries maybe, but we got to get the storage rules right, both in PJM and at the state level. We'll figure that one out. They haven't figured that out yet. So as soon as they see the prices coming down to that point, I think folks are going to be excited about it. I do think hydrogen is just a no-brainer if we can get the safety right. And the reason I say that is it's just, why would you not replace a carbon molecule with a hydrogen molecule if you're still going to warm your home today? You don't have to change the appliance. You don't have to change the pipes in many places. Why would you not just do that? So if we can get the electrolyzers in, I know there's a supply chain issue there. We got that, to me, is going to get us over a hurdle faster than anything else that's out there. And there are, like, I think our state's in a really good spot for that. And I'll get into, there's two hubs that are involved, and I think there's some opportunities there.
We got time for one more question. So the pressure of the last question, which I guess I'll take. So just on those last topics, one of the things people are starting to ask, well, how about the elections, and could IRA get rolled back in some way, or things like that? Any thoughts on that topic and how you're thinking about? Yeah.
I think I don't want to say never to anything in government these days, right? I mean, there's anything happen. So, but the one thing that you see consistently across both sides of the aisle is nuclear. So I don't see whether it's called an IRA PTC or it's called XYZ AB. Nuclear's got to get support. It has a ton of reasons for that, not the least of which is national security.
Yeah.
And I'll stop the comments there, right? I mean, it absolutely has to continue. So for us, the biggest one that's out there is nuclear, and I'm not too worried about that. I think there may be some things on the margin where they're focused on other technologies. And I think hydrogen, more people are knocking on my door about hydrogen than are Republicans than are Democrats. So
clean energy is here to stay regardless. And we saw that even with the Trump administration previous, that clean energy is here to stay. And we filed our last integrated resource plan in 2021 before the Inflation Reduction Act. And it still called for the retirement of coal and the replacement with a lot more renewables in the mix. And so that was before all this recent round of tax credits. And so it's only sweetened that profile. So if they were reversed, we're still on a plan to again, do more renewables and continue that path to clean energy.
Chris Christie just told us a few words we couldn't use, but everything was the same.
Well, great. Well, Ralph, Garrick, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for your questions.
Yeah, thanks.
Good to see you.